The Grand Mufti of Palestine Hajj Muhammad Effendi Amin el-Husseini of Jerusalem was born in 1897 and passed away on July 4 of 1974. El-Husseini was an honored and highly respected Palestinian Arab nationalist and Muslim leader. An ally of Germany in the Axis, he used his extremely influential position to help Germany recruit Muslims into the Waffen-SS. He personally met with Adolf Hitler several times during the war. As a historical note, he is also the uncle of Yasser Arafat. Commando Extraordinaire Otto Skorzeny met with al-Husseini several times and considered him one of the most amazing men he had ever met. He described him as a visually striking man, with blue eyes and a long white beard. The source for this Otto Skorzeny quote is taken from his book, My Commando Operations, the memoirs of Hitler's most daring commando. Islam is not the enemy of the West. Nor are Muslims the enemy of the white race, despite the brainless propaganda touting such. During World War II, thousands of Muslims and Arabs fought beside their German friends. The great undying cause of truth and freedom is shared between all peoples. Germany and the Arab world shared a long-time friendship. One of cooperation, understanding and respect. In January 1944, Heinrich Himmler met with a group of Bosnian Muslim military commanders in Silesia. What he said to them is very telling. Quote, "What is there to separate the Muslims in Europe and around the world from us Germans? We have common names. There is no more solid basis for cooperation than common aims and common ideals. For 200 years, Germany has not had the slightest conflict with Islam. Germany had been friends with Islam, not just for pragmatic reasons but out of conviction. God, you say Allah, it is the same, had sent the Führer, who would first free Europe and then the entire world of the Jews." End quote. But actions speak much louder than words. During Germany's crusade to free Russia from monstrous communism, and its entry into the Caucasus and the Crimea, the Wehrmacht was tasked with reviving Islamic culture and religion, which had been stamped out by Zog communism. Upon arriving in the North Caucasus, for example, Wehrmacht officers set about reopening and rebuilding mosques and re-establishing religious holidays and celebrations. The German liberators lifted the bans on public displays of Arabic and Quranic script in public, which had been banned by the Soviet occupiers. Muslim leaders welcomed the German armies as friends and liberators. Freedom of religion was restored by the Sons of the Swastika. In a fatwa, which is a ruling on a point of Islamic law given by recognized authority, delivered on May 10 of 1941 by the Grand Mufti, said the following: "In the name of merciful and almighty God, I invite all my Muslim brothers throughout the whole world to join in the holy war for God, for the defense of Islam and her lands against her enemy. O faithful, obey and respond to my call. O Muslims, proud Iraq has placed herself in the vanguard of this holy struggle, and has thrown herself against the strongest enemy of Islam, certain that God will grant her victory. The English have tried to seize this Arab Muslim land, but she has risen, full of dignity and pride, to defend her safety, to fight for her honor and to safeguard her integrity. Iraq fights the tyranny which has always had as its aim the destruction of Islam in every land. It is the duty of all Muslims to aid Iraq in her struggle and to seek every means to fight the enemy, the traditional traitor in every age and every situation. Whoever knows the history of the East has everywhere seen the hand of the English working to destroy the Ottoman Empire and to divide the Arab countries. British politics toward the Arab people is masked under a veil of hypocrisy. The minute she sees her chance, England squeezes the prostrate country in her imperialist grasp, adding futile justifications. She creates discord and division within a country, and while feeding it in secret openly she assumes the role of advisor and trusted hand. The time when England could deceive the peoples of the East is past. the Arab nation and the Muslim people have awakened to fight British domination. The English have overthrown the Ottoman Empire, have destroyed Muslim rule in India. Inciting one community against another, they stifled the Egyptian awakening, the dream of Muhammad Ali, colonizing Egypt for half a century. They took advantage of the weakening of the Ottoman Empire to stretch out their hands and use every sort of trick to take possession of many Arab countries, as happened to Aden, the 9 districts, the Hadramaut, Oman, Muscat and the Emirates of the Persian Gulf and Transjordania. The vivid proof of the imperialistic designs of the British is to be found in Muslim Palestine, which, although promised by England to Sheriff Hussein, has had to submit to the outrageous infiltration of Jews, shameful politics designed to divide Arab Muslim countries of Asia from those of Africa. In Palestine the English have committed unheard of barbarisms. Among others, they have profaned the Al-Aqsa Mosque and have declared the most unyielding war against Islam, both in deed and in word. The Prime Minister at the time told Parliament that the world would never see peace as long as the Quran existed. What hatred against Islam is stronger than that which publicly declares the sacred Quran an enemy of humankind? Should such sacrilege go unpunished? After the dissolution of the Muslim Empire in India and of the Ottoman Caliphate, England, adhering to the policy of Gladstone, pursued her work of destruction to Islam, depriving many Islamic states both in the East and in the West of their freedom and independence. The number of Muslims who today live under the rule of England and invoke liberation from their terrible yoke exceeds 220 million. Therefore I invite you, O brothers, to join in the war for God to preserve Islam, your independence and your lands from English aggression. I invite you to bring all your weight to bear in helping Iraq, that she may throw off the shame that torments her. O heroic Iraq, God is with thee, the Arab nation and the Muslim world are solidly with thee in thy holy struggle. After meeting with Adolf Hitler in Berlin on November 21, 1941, Hajar Amin al-Husseini recorded in his own handwriting his meeting with Hitler in his diary. The words of the Fuhrer on the 6th of Zulqa'dah 1360 of the Hejira, which falls on the 21st of November 1941, Berlin, Friday, from 4:30 p.m. till a few minutes after 6. The objectives of my fight are clear. Primarily, I am fighting the Jews without respite, and this fight includes the fight against the so-called Jewish national home in Palestine, because the Jews want to establish the central government for their own pernicious purposes, and to undertake a devastating and ruinous expansion at the expense of the governments of the world and of other peoples. It is clear that the Jews have accomplished nothing in Palestine and their claims are lies. All the accomplishments in Palestine are due to the Arabs and not to the Jews. I am resolved to find a solution for the Jewish problem, progressing step by step without cessation. With regard to this I am making the necessary and right appeal, first to all the European countries and then to countries outside of Europe. It is true that our common enemies are Great Britain and the Soviets, whose principles are opposed to ours. But behind them stands hidden Jewry, which drives them both. Jewry has but one aim in both these countries. We are now in the midst of a life and death struggle against both these nations. This fight will not only determine the outcome of the struggle between National Socialism and Jewry, but the whole conduct of this successful war will be of great and positive help to the Arabs who are engaged in the same struggle. This is not only an abstract assurance. A mere promise would be of no value whatsoever. But assurance which rests upon a conquering force is the only one which has real value. In the Iraqi campaign, for instance, the sympathy of the whole German people was for Iraq. It was our aim to help Iraq, but circumstances prevented us from furnishing actual help. The German people saw in them, in the Iraqis, comrades in suffering, because the German people too have suffered as they have. All the help we gave Iraq was not sufficient to save Iraq from the British forces. For this reason it is necessary to underscore one thing: in this struggle which will decide the fate of the Arabs, I can now speak as a man dedicated to an ideal and as a military leader and a soldier. everyone united in this great struggle who helps to bring about its successful outcome, serves the common cause and thus serves the Arab cause. Any other view means weakening the military situation and thus offers no help to the Arab cause. Therefore it is necessary for us to decide the steps which can help us against world Jewry, against communist Russia and England, and which among them can be most useful. Only if we win the war will the hour of deliverance also be the hour of fulfillment of Arab aspirations. On March 19 of 1943, in Rome, the Mufti speaks out to Arab Americans, asking them to not support Zog puppet FDR. The following are excerpts from this very radio speech. The Arabs and Muslims will not be deceived by Britain once again, because not only have they known its true intentions but they have also known those of Britain's allies America, and I want to draw the attention of the Arab emigrants in America to this fact, reminding them of their glorious past when they supported the national movement. I would also like to remind them that their efforts will be wasted if, God forbid, America and her allies may be victorious in this war, because at such a time the Arabs will never rise again. I therefore know that those Arab emigrants in America will refrain from helping Roosevelt or taking part in a war which he brought onto his country. If those allies win this war, the Jewish influence will be the arbiter in the world resources, and one can thus imagine the future of the Arabs and Muslims, and the dangers which they are exposed to in their fatherlands and beliefs if the Jews and their allies dominate them and spread the latent hatred onto them. Then the world will become hell, God forbid, but Allah is too just and merciful to grant such murderous violators any victory. We are sure that victory will be ours and that of our friends. We have not the slightest doubt about that. We shall not slacken our struggle, nor will we be deterred or quietened. Do not be deceived by the allegations of your enemies, because you know full well about their intrigues, and be sure that the nation which fights, sacrifices and awaits will be the victorious one in the end. On November 2nd of 1943, Heinrich Himmler sent a message to an anti-Balfour Declaration meeting. He stated the following, quote, "To the Grand Mufti. The National Socialist movement of Greater Germany has, since its beginning, inscribed upon its flag the fight against world Jewry. It has, therefore, followed with particular sympathy the struggle of the freedom-loving Arabians, especially in Palestine, against the Jewish interlopers. It is in the recognition of this enemy and of the common struggle against him that lies the firm foundation of the natural alliance that exists between National Socialist Greater Germany and the freedom-loving Muslims of the whole world. In this spirit I am sending you on the anniversary of the infamous Balfour Declaration my hearty greetings and wishes for the successful pursuit of your struggle until the certain final victory. Signed, Reichsführer SS Heinrich Himmler." On April 28 of 1942, Ribbentrop wrote a letter to the Grand Mufti Haj Mohammed Effendi Amin el-Husseini on the behalf of the National Socialist Germany Ministry of Foreign Affairs. It read as follows. In response to your letter and to the accompanying communication of His Excellency, Prime Minister Asad Ali El-Gailani, and confirming the terms of our conversation, I have the honor to inform you the German government appreciates fully the confidence of the Arab peoples in the Axis powers in their aims and in their determination to conduct the fight against the common enemy until victory is achieved. The German government has the greatest understanding for the national aspirations of the Arab countries as have been expressed by you both, and the greatest sympathy for the sufferings of your peoples under British oppression. I have therefore the honor to assure you, in complete agreement with the Italian government, that the independence and freedom of the suffering Arab countries presently subjected to British oppression, is also one of the aims of the German government. Germany is consequently ready to give all her support to the oppressed Arab countries in their fight against British domination, for the fulfillment of their national aim to independence and sovereignty, and for the destruction of the Jewish national home in Palestine. As previously agreed, the content of this letter should be maintained absolutely secret until we decide otherwise. I beg your Eminence to be assured of my highest esteem and consideration. To His Eminence, The Grand Mufti Haj Muhammad Effendi Amin El Husseini. Signed, Ribbentrop. In Africa, the Germans and the Arab people were both allies and friends. The German government, in accordance with Arab and Muslim leaders, printed leaflets which they spread throughout the Arabic population, telling the people that they must help fight for their liberation. One such leaflet, from 1943 in Arabic, was printed in 1 million copies and said the following: "O Arabs! Do you see that the time of the Dajjal, who is comparable to the Antichrist, has come? Do you recognize him, the fat, curly-haired Jew who deceives and rules the whole world and who steals the land of the Arabs? O Arabs! Do you know the servant of God? Hitler has already appeared in the world and already turned his lance against the Dajjal and his allies. He will kill the Dajjal, as it is written, destroy his places and cast his allies into hell." The Grand Mufti Hajj Muhammad el-Husseini of Jerusalem was an iron ally of Germany in the Axis. Like many other Muslims, he lived in Germany in exile during the war. Adolf Hitler personally promised him that he would liberate the Arab peoples. The Mufti admired Germany and had great respect for the German people. He said that Germans were a people with boldness, perseverance, toughness, and a love of order, and declared that every Muslim throughout the world is a friend of the Germans. Even after the war, the Arab people did not forget the Germans' sacrifice and commitment to them. They opened up their hearts and their doors to thousands of Germans fleeing the murderous, bloodthirsty Allies. They helped these Germans obtain new identities, gave them jobs and new lives. One such person was the German Johann von Leers. Dr. Johann von Leers was a devoted National Socialist and old fighter for the cause. He was a professor and propaganda ministry official and was also an honorary Sturmbannführer. After the war he converted to Islam and changed his name to Omar Amin von Leers. He served in the Egyptian Information Department and was even an advisor to the President of Egypt, Gamal Abdel Nasser. In the May 29, 1953 issue of the Deutschland Brief, von Leers praised the natural affinities between the German and Arab peoples. He wrote, "This is no doubt due to the moving humanitarian reception which hundreds, perhaps thousands of German refugees, found after the war among the Muslims of the Middle East. Islam's simple all-God doctrine, which is not tied to Judaism, and its enmity against the Jews, won the allegiance of many of these refugees. The repercussions are gradually being felt in Germany." There were a number of notable German Muslims during the Third Reich and many other Germans who converted to Islam after the war. Talk about Adolf Hitler and religious freedom. Here's a small list of National Socialist German Muslims. Also of interest is a December 1942 essay von Leers published in the journal Die Judenfrage entitled Judaism and Islam as Opposites. Muhammad's hostility to the Jews had one result: Oriental Jewry was completely paralyzed. Its backbone was broken. Oriental Jewry effectively did not participate in European Jewry's tremendous rise to power in the last 2 centuries. Despised in the filthy lanes of the Mellah, the walled Jewish quarter of a Moroccan city, analogous to the European ghetto, the Jews vegetated there. They lived under a special law, that of a protected minority, which in contrast to Europe did not permit usury or even traffic in stolen goods, but kept them in a state of oppression and anxiety. If the rest of the world had adopted a similar policy, we would not have a Jewish question. As a religion, Islam indeed performed an eternal service to the world. It prevented the threatened conquest of Arabia by the Jews and vanquished the horrible teaching of Jehovah by a pure religion, which at that time opened the way to a higher culture for numerous peoples. For his writings, Omar Amin von Leers was pursued by his Jewish enemies and the countries they controlled until his death in Cairo in 1965. Friedrich Nietzsche once said, "Christianity destroyed for us the whole harvest of ancient civilization, and later it also destroyed for us the whole harvest of Mohammedan civilization." The wonderful culture of the Moors in Spain, which was fundamentally nearer to us and appealed more to our senses and tastes than that of Rome and Greece, was trampled down, I do not say by what sort of feet, Why? Because it had to thank noble and manly instincts for its origin, because it said yes to life, even to the rare and refined luxuriousness of Moorish life. The Crusaders later made war on something before which it would have been more fitting for them to have grovelled in the dust, a civilization beside which even that of our 19th century seems very poor and very senile. What they wanted, of course, was booty. The Orient was rich. Let us put aside our prejudices. The Crusades were a higher form of piracy, nothing more. Intrinsically there should be no more choice between Islam and Christianity than there is between an Arab and a Jew. The decision is already reached. Nobody remains at liberty to choose here. Either a man is a lower caste, or he is not. Water the knife with Rome. Peace and friendship with Islam. This was the feeling, this was the act, of that great free spirit, the genius among German emperors, Frederick II. National Socialist Germany and the Axis powers found anxious supporters amongst the Arab peoples. They found many die-hard supporters of National Socialism and Adolf Hitler in Palestine. The Palestinians saw National Socialism as liberation from the British Yiddish-Israeli Zog Empire that has in modern day, due to the events of World War Zog, installed a Palestinian Zog they now call Israel. Palestine was brutally stolen from the Palestinian people after World War II. In the history of mankind there are few peoples who have endured the hell the Palestinian people endure every day. They live in a constant state of terror, violence and hopelessness. Their homes, businesses and land stolen from right under their feet. 750,000 people driven from their homes. For over 6 decades they've literally lived in concentration camps, unable to even freely leave to go to the hospital or doctor. A racist, criminal gang murders and destroys them generation after generation and, for the most part, the world remains silent. Adolf Hitler gave quite an illuminating response to US Zog puppet Roosevelt about Palestine on April 28 of 1939. It read as follows. In the same way, the fact has obviously escaped Mr. Roosevelt's notice that Palestine is at present occupied not by German troops but by the English, and that the country is having its liberty restricted by the most brutal resort to force, is being robbed of its independence and is suffering the cruelest maltreatment for the benefit of Jewish interlopers. The Arabs in that country will therefore certainly not have complained to Mr. Roosevelt of German aggression, but they do voice a continuous appeal to the world deploring the barbarous methods with which England is attempting to suppress a people which loves its freedom and is just defending it. This too is perhaps a problem which would have to be resolved at the conference table, that is in the presence of a judge, and not by physical force, military force, mass executions, burning down villages, blowing up houses, and so on. For one fact is in no doubt. In this case England is not defending herself against a threatened Arab attack, but as interloper, and without being called to do so, is endeavoring to establish her power in a foreign territory which does not belong to her. Abd al-Qadir al-Husseini was a Palestinian Arab nationalist and nephew of the honored friend and ally to Adolf Hitler, the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem Muhammad Amin al-Husseini. In late 1933 Abd al-Qadir al-Husseini founded a militant group called the Organization for Holy Struggle, which he and another Palestinian Arab nationalist, Hassan Salama, commanded as the Army of the Holy War during the 1936 through 1939 Arab Revolt and again during the 1948 Palestine War. Abd al-Qadir al-Husseini studied chemistry and graduated from the American University in Cairo in the early 1930s, and during this time he organized the Congress of Educated Muslims. The purpose of the Congress was to fight discrimination against Palestinian Arabs in government services under the British Mandate. Early in al-Husseini's career he worked for the British Mandate government in the settlement department, but during the 1936 to 1939 Arab revolt in Palestine he moved to Hebron and led the struggle against the British that were helping to oppress his people. As a member of the Palestine Arab Party, which was founded by al-Husseini's family, al-Husseini served as the party's Secretary General and was also the editor-in-chief of the party's newspaper Al-Liwa plus other papers including Al-Jamiz Al-Islamiyya. In 1934 al-Qadir al-Husseini married and in 1940 his son was born. Al-Qadir's son was named Faisal al-Husseini. He grew up and continued in his father's footsteps to try to free his people. He was the founder and leader of the Arab Studies Society, head of FATU and the Palestinian Authority Minister for Jerusalem Affairs. Abd al-Qadir al-Husseini was exiled in 1938 and in 1939 he had to flee to Iraq and took part in the Rashid Ali al-Gaylani coup. He then moved to Egypt in 1946. His heart and fate, however, led him back to Palestine in January of 1948 to lead the Army of the Holy War. Tragically al-Husseini was killed in the Battle of Al-Castle while personally surveying an area of Castle Hill shrouded by fog in the early hours of April 8, 1948. It was an incredible blow to the morale of his men. He is revered today as a martyr of his people and a revolutionary of the highest order. Hassan Salama, second in command of the Army of the Holy War in the 1948 Palestine War along with Abd al-Qadir al-Husseini. Salama was a member of the political party the Palestinian Arab Party created by the al-Husseini family. He was born in the village Qla during the Ottoman rule over Palestine. He was one of the leaders of the armed Arab groups who fought against the British and the Jewish rule in his homeland. He participated in the 1933 Jaffa demonstrations during the 1933 Palestine riots, and became the leader of the 1936 through 1939 Arab revolt in Palestine. In early May 1936 he was in charge of commanding the Lod, Ramallah and Jaffa areas. He successfully led several military operations against the Jewish forces and their British collaborators. His men disrupted the enemy's communications by blowing up railway tracks and power poles. During one of these such operations in 1938 Hassan Salama was unfortunately wounded. After the Arab revolt in Palestine Salama traveled to Lebanon and Syria and joined the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem Amin al-Husseini. It was at this point that Salama increased his military education and took a tank commander's course at the military college in Iraq. He was in Iraq supporting Rashid Ali al-Gaylani with a group of 165 Palestinian fighters during the coup of 1941 and the Anglo-Iraqi war that followed. After a short time of freedom from the world's oppressors, the pro-Axis government of Rashid Ali al-Gaylani was overthrown by the British in 1941. Adolf Hitler and the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem Amin al-Husseini had an epic meeting representing the unification of two peoples against a common enemy. The Grand Mufti then sent Salama along with a group of his fellow Arab comrades to Germany for military training. Salama was trained to be a paratrooper. Hassan Salama became a member of a special commando unit of the Waffen-SS in Operation Atlas, which was a joint operation by German intelligence and Grand Mufti al-Husseini. On the night of October 6, 1944 Salama, along with 4 other commandos, parachuted from a German Heinkel Hees 3 into the British Mandate of Palestine over the Jericho region in Wadi Kelt. They carried money, explosives, dynamite, submachine guns, radio equipment, etc. Even after injuring his foot, Salama and one of his German comrades evaded capture. They took refuge in the village of Kula, where a local doctor treated his injury. Their mission was to supply local Palestinian Arab resistance groups with resources, and to direct sabotage activity primarily at Jewish, rather than British, targets. In the 1947 through 1948 civil war, Salama was by then the second in command of the Army of the Holy War. This force of local Palestinian Arab irregulars from the British Mandate of Palestine had grown to be over 50,000 strong. Salama commanded the forces in Jaffa, the coastal plain, Ramallah and Lut. Sadly, Hassan Salama was murdered on his own soil by the international Mossad criminal Kitzog terrorist invaders known as the Israeli Defense Forces. The Kite terrorists murdered Hassan Salama on June 2 of 1948 in the Battle of Ras Al Ain. The struggle of al-Husseini and Salama continues almost 70 years after their valiant deaths. The graveyards are filled with invisible children. Children whom the world largely ignores. The Freemasonic military Zog occupation of the Palestinian people remains one the most brutal and longest in modern history, on par with that of what they did to the Russians and other neighboring white Europeans, and various other races they conquered, through the Soviet-Israeli Zog of Russia. Look into the Holodomor to learn more about what happened in Russia. Here is the body of 4-year-old Palestinian boy Sahir Abu Namus, who was murdered by an Israeli Jew terrorist airstrike, during the 51-day Israeli Kite terrorist war against the Palestinian people on the Gaza Strip.
Rachel Corrie, a 23-year-old American student, went to Gaza to join in these efforts, sending back emails to her parents. I have been in Palestine for 2 weeks and 1 hour now, and I still have very few words to describe what I see. It is most difficult for me to think about what's going on here when I sit down to write back to the United States. Something about the virtual portal into luxury. I don't know if many of the children here have ever existed without tank shell holes in their walls, and the towers of an occupying army surveying them constantly from the near horizons. I think, although I'm not entirely sure, that even the smallest of these children understand that life is not like this everywhere. It was Sunday afternoon in Charlotte, about noon actually, and I received a phone call, and he hesitated for a minute, and he said, "We've had some very sad news." And then my daughter, Sarah, I could hear her in the background, and she got on the telephone, and she said, "Mom, it's Rachel." And I think the first words out of my mouth then were, "Is she dead?"
The bulldozer drove up, and it kept going, and she tried to move back, but she couldn't move back, and she got caught underneath. She got caught underneath the bulldozer. Many other internationals began to surround the bulldozer and yell at it and tell us that there is somebody there, and it did not stop.
Where Rachel was killed, she was protecting a doctor's home. And that's important to realize. And the 3 children, his wife, she knew that family, and that doctor felt that Rachel was like a daughter to him. He bought that house. It was in the middle of a neighborhood. There were other rows of houses between his house and the border. Those other homes, those other streets were all destroyed, and now it was history. And I've had people say, well, she was in a war zone. And Cindy points out that war zone is people's neighborhoods. Those are children.
I'm here for other children. I'm here because I care. I'm here because children everywhere are suffering, and because 40,000 people die each day from hunger. I'm here because those people are mostly children. We have got to understand that the poor are all around us, and we're ignoring them. We have got to understand that these deaths are preventable. We have got to understand that people in third world countries think and care and smile and cry just like us. We have got to understand that they are us. We are them. My dream is to stop hunger by the year 2000. My dream is to give the poor a chance. My dream is to save the 40,000 people who die each day. My dream can and will come true if we all look into the future and see the light that shines there.
We do not seek conflict. We know the strength of the forces arrayed against us. Know that because of them, we can only use peaceful means, but we are determined that justice will be done. The symbol of our status is embodied in this pass, which we must carry at all times, but which no European even has to have. The first step towards changing our status is to eliminate this difference between us.
Now? You write brilliantly, but you have much to learn about handling men. We do not want to ignite the fear or hatred of anyone, but we ask you, Hindu, Muslim and Sikh, to help us light up the sky and the minds of the British authorities with our defiance of this injustice. We will now burn the passes of our committee and its supporters. We ask you to put your passes on the fire with the conviction.
Those passes are government property, and I will arrest the first man who tries to burn one. Take him away.
Now! Not at any more. If you want this kind of trouble, you can have it.
Wenn es heute einen Engländer gibt, der nun aufsteht und sagt, wir sind verantwortlich für das Schicksal der Völker in Mitteleuropa, wir sind verantwortlich für das Schicksal der Völker in Osteuropa, so kann ich diesen Herrn nur sagen, genauso könnten wir erklären, wir sind verantwortlich für das Schicksal der Völker in Palästina, für das Schicksal der Völker in Ägypten, für das Schicksal der Völker meinetwegen in Libyen. 15 Jahre lang haben wir auf das Grausamste gegen die natürlichsten Volksintressen, ja gegen jede Menschenwürde gehandelt, ohne sich jemals um die Meinung und Eingeborenen zu kümmern, haben sich Kontinente mit blutiger Gewalt unterworfen. Aber da Deutschland seine Kolonie zurückfordert, erklärt man bestürzt um das Los der armen Eingeborenen, man könne sich einem solchen Schicksal unter keinen Umständen mehr aussetzen. Im selben Moment aber schreibt man sich nicht, durch Flugzeuge und Bomben in den eigenen Kolonien die Eingeborenen zur Raison zu bringen. Das heißt, die lieben, farbigen Mitbürger zu zwingen, die ihnen verhasste Fremdherrschaft weiterzudulden. Ebenfalls ist Herrn Roosevelt das wichtig Diktator gegangen, dass Palästina zur Zeit der gar nicht von deutschen Truppen, sondern von Engländern besetzt ist und mit brutalsten Gewaltmitteln seiner Freiheit beschränkt und um seine Unabhängigkeit gebracht wird und zugunsten jüdischer Eindringlinge die grausamsten Misshandlungen erduldet. Die in diesem Land lebenden Araber dürfen sich gegenüber Roosevelt daher sicherlich nicht über eine deutsche Aggression beschwert haben, aber sie beklagen sich in andauernden Appellen an die Weltöffentlichkeit über die barbarischen Methoden, mit denen England dort ein seiner Freiheit liebendes und nur seine Freiheit verteidigendes Volk niederzuzwingen versucht. Auch dies wäre vielleicht ein Problem, das man nach der Auffassung des Herrn Roosevelt am Konferenztisch würde lösen müssen. Vor einem gerechten Richter also und nicht durch brachiale Gewalt und militärische Mittel, durch Machtverschießungen, durch das Niederbrennen von Körpern, Sprengen von Häusern und so weiter. Denn eines steht so unzweifelhaft fest, dass England in diesem Fall nicht in Abwehr eines drohenden arabischen Angriffs auf England handelt. und niemand gerufen, Eindringling in einem England nicht gehörenden fremden Gebiet seine Gewalt aufrichten will.
Ich bin auch keineswegs gewillt, hier mitten im Herzen Deutschlands durch die Tüchtigkeit anderer Staatsmänner ein zweites Palästina entstehen zu lassen. Die armen Araber sind sehr